Hello, hello.
Hello, how are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm good. Always nice to see you.
Yes. I'm excited for what today has to bring.
Yeah, we never know.
So we start with our bring ourselves to focus and do a
Yeah,
little of a meditation and
yeah,
come
that sounds
center.
that sounds perfect. Let's just take a moment to settle into the space you want to, and whoever's watching wants to close their eyes or keep them open. It's completely up to you. But together, let's just hold and share space. Just feeling that we do not have to do this on our own. Together, just starting to feel that in-breath and starting to feel that out-breath. Just allow your being time to settle. Allow the head and neck to settle. Shoulders, arms, and hands. And just coming back to that breath at the nose as you breathe in and as you breathe out. See if you can start to feel the presence of your body as you allow it time to rest. And the presence of your breath. Let that come back into your awareness. You may start to notice a feeling of steadiness and groundedness as the feeling of the body and the breath are felt. Just give yourself a moment to rest in that. Know that other beings are here with you doing the same, holding that space. And then just starting to take a slightly deeper breath to awaken the body. Coming back into the room. And when you feel ready to do so, just allowing the eyes to open. I'm just connecting from here. My pleasure.
Thank you, Rachel.
My pleasure. So, what shall we do today? We were just before talking about fatigue, as I am experiencing a little bit, and how you can show up or you can practice no matter how you're feeling. You do not have to be feeling joyful or peaceful. You're angry. No matter how you feel, you're perfect for a practice.
Yes, and actually, just during our moment there, um, an idea came to me, and I don't know if you've heard this before, but it's a term that Pema Chodron uses called positive groundlessness.
No, I haven't heard that one.
That expression. What does it mean to you? Because when we talked about, the fatigue, and I was trying to center, and that was something that came forward. If you think about it, what comes up for you?
Well, I go back into the feeling of, so when I'm in say, a yoga practice, there can be times where when you're moving or doing things, fatigue comes. And so I'll rest in, say, a forward bend uttanasana, or I'll rest lying on my back just to give myself time to feel that, what I call good fatigue. The fatigue that actually brings deep relaxation and a really deep feeling of being in my body and its presence. So for me, when you say that, I don't know if it's connected, but the feeling really is, oh, sometimes there's such beautiful fatigue, and it can bring such beautiful things that it's not necessarily a bad thing.
I think, yeah, especially if you choose to honor it.
Mm.
Because I think if we're fatigued, but we still have to bring ourselves forward, or we still have things to accomplish in our day, then it can lead to fatigue becoming something like stress. But then if you honor that fatigue, it turns into something much more healthy and positive in that respect as well. But I thought of it in the sense of, she describes it as sort of showing up. Sometimes you might be in a state of discomfort, or sometimes stepping out of she describes it as stepping out of your comfort zone. There's almost a sense of groundlessness, right? And so we were trying to ground ourselves just as we started this conversation. But she says it's important to learn how to embrace that groundlessness. And so she calls it a sort of positive groundlessness, which I really like that, because there's something so magical about being in that state, whether, it's you have some fatigue or you have some discomfort, but if you choose to show up despite that, and even still, you can still honor yourself, right? Because even if you don't, let's say, you don't have the opportunity to get into a yoga pose or relax your stay in that way, you can still just honor yourself by being open about it, sharing your feelings, right? And then that puts you into that positive groundlessness.
Help me again, because it's a new concept. So groundlessness, and it's linked to fatigue, is what she's saying?
No, not necessarily, but I linked it because I thought, because when we said showing up, that's when it came to me. But I think my understanding of it is more like this. So there might be, because here is our comfort zone, right? And then here is where all the magic happens. But generally, stepping out of our comfort zone, we feel a sort of disequilibrium sometimes, or a sort of groundlessness, she calls it. Because that's where the magic happens. If we learn how to operate within that state, then there's so much reward follows through.
I see. And okay.
So true, right? I mean, I think I've certainly always experienced it in those situations where I think you're back.
I think we froze for a second. Yeah. That's what happens online. Yeah, I find that interesting. What popped into my head, I've been watching some of Will Smith has a YouTube channel.
Cool.
And it's pretty interesting. I mean, he's very entertaining, but he's really seemed to dedicated his life to not only bringing joy to all beings, but to living in a place where he is always growing, where he has opportunities to be in peace and personal growth is what I hear from him. And that idea, he has a thing he said, and of course, I think it was Arnold Schwarzenegger as his mentor, so it might have been like coming out of the Arnie voice. But
yes,
he talked about nervousness.
And
he talked about it as somewhat of a positive thing in terms of, that's where you are in some place of learning. You don't know it yet. So there's like that feeling of that's that edge where I think you're also describing of that groundlessness of like a little discomfort, a little bit unknown, but there's huge potential. And if we don't go to those places because we may pick up a story or a belief that discomfort is bad, and nervousness is always bad, and not knowing how to do something is bad, and we stay away, we miss those beautiful opportunities to see all that our being is.
That's beautiful. Yes, that's so true.
Yeah, he's actually very inspiring.
Yes, actually, I've also been following him a little bit, and it's interesting seeing him and his family. and the way that together they've embarked on this healing journey. And it's so amazing. His wife does a show, I think, the
Red Table.
Yes, Red Table. I love those. So inspirational. So, and her mother too, right? Have you seen some of those?
Yeah, it's nice to see that more and more this is coming into our consciousness. People want to talk about what's actually happening in their lives and to see if they can do it in a way that has consciousness and love and support and maybe healing.
That's so true. And I definitely believe that we can get to a tipping point, right? Especially when there's so many more people who are talking about raising consciousness. And the more we do it, it's imminent.
Yeah. And actually that makes me think of when I was walking the other day. I went to the park because in Toronto in Hyde Park they have this cherry blossom festival.
Are they
they're not quite there yet, so I didn't make it to it. But as I was walking and I was thinking about what we're doing and women's voices and mindfulness, and we talk about, we're just saying the Red Table Talk and more of this is coming. I also imagine, like, what if, I'm sure we both have mentors or people that have influenced us, that what if now instead of just me and you, we were starting to branch this out to other amazing women, and we did these talks with them, and then imagine how far reaching that would be in terms of all this beautiful content where those voices might not be heard because maybe they're not, a teacher, or maybe they aren't a Buddhist nun, or maybe they aren't, but they're in that field. If we can start to just have these conversations where people get reflected, that it can look like a female form, it can look like a male form, it can look like any form.
Absolutely.
But if we get to do that, then I think then there's a possibility of saying, oh, this is something that I too can participate in. It's not just for the monks and the nuns and the yogis sitting in the caves. It's for everyone.
Yeah, I love that. And I think more and more those conversations are starting, and we just got to keep it going.
Yeah, maybe that can be our challenge, and a challenge to people viewing that. Like, who do you know that is inspiring? Who do you know that you think is beautiful? Who do you know that you think has so much joy? And to me, that is a talk in mindfulness. And if we can have that challenge to say, hey, like, just go on Skype, record something, and you'll have this beautiful teaching, really, of every time you go back to it, it will remind you of the joy. It will remind you of the beauty. It will remind you of that presence and consciousness. Now it's here for you whenever you want to come back to it. Imagine if everybody had those opportunities.
Absolutely. Yeah. I don't know if you listen to Oprah's masterclass, but it opens up with saying everybody has a story, and it's so interesting when you actually choose to be in presence with another person and hear them and what they have to say and actually listen, right? Because I think that a lot of us, our attention is always being pulled away from us in various directions, and we think we're great listeners, but the truth is it all comes down to how mindful we are, how mindfully attentive we are in every conversation. But when we are, it's amazing. That's so much can come out of it.
To me, that's one of the keys to healing, or just remembering the goodness that is here. There's so many times when, whether I'm with a patient or whether I'm talking within, if I'm talking within and, there's something really difficult going on and I can feel tension, if I don't turn to it and let it know that it's been fully heard, let it know that, hey, I'm here to help you, what do you need? Then the goodness goes. the feeling of agitation gets higher, the feeling of all that goes up. And so that deep listening, that deep acknowledgement that I hear you, that deep knowing that somebody will be there to support me and meet my needs. And when that comes, then the goodness and is there, and really what I say is healing is there.
Mm-hmm.
So when we think about communication and listening, that too in itself is healing.
Mm. Yeah, because we can all relate on our humanness, if not anything else. And just to know that we are all human, we all go through the same experiences, whether they are diverse and vastly different, we can at least come back down to the core of what it is that essentially makes us who we are. And so in that respect, really, I mean, it just allows an openness and a flexibility and I think an embrace of people in general. And if you don't have that, then obviously then all you could focus on is the differences. And if you start to go down that road, well, then we can see what's happening in the world today with a lot of those types of situations where it's very unconscious, ego-led movements and things like that are quite unfortunate. But I think that as we were talking about, the more conversations that we have about these important topics, the more that we can raise our voices, the more we can bring us closer to that tipping point. Because really, I think right now we're writing the story, right? We're writing our future and we're creating it. So it's what sort of new earth do we want to be a part of? It takes every one of us. It takes every single voice, especially those voices that, like you said, maybe aren't being heard or have felt like they don't have a place. But those are the ones that we need the most, I think, right now.
Yeah. I like that idea of humanness or humanity, that yes, sometimes there is focuses on differences and sometimes there is violent communication, but if everyone was given an opportunity where in front of them they could come back to harmony, they could come back to peace, or they could come back to safety, all these qualities, then that opportunity would help remind that being that lives within them. So we, out of no fault and no judgment, we pick up stuff that we don't even know we have. Where if our communication is violent, we might not even know that, what we are saying can be really, really agitating or hurtful or scary when people come across it. And we just didn't know, and we just need that opportunity where someone is modeling, where someone has the teachings to say, hey, there's this other way. If you're interested, it's here. And we don't have to convince or try to, make people believe. It's really, if you feel what's here, if you feel that harmony, if you feel that presence, that safety, that's what will be undeniable. And if being wants to come back to that or have more moments of that, that's when I think those, our videos and everything are so important, because it's like, oh, I forgot.
Yeah, that's so good. And the truth resonates, right? So just like you said, when you're ready to hear it, it's undeniable because it resonates with your whole being. And I think it's just a matter of, I guess for some people, it's just an awareness. It all comes back down to that, right? Giving it a chance and saying, well, let me hear or let me take a listen, or and staying open. I think right now in these times of rapid change and transformation, and that is so important.
Yeah. Well, again, too, even if we don't stay open, as long as there's content that's coming across where there's another opportunity for the opening of our hearts to happen again, to me, that's the most important, because we're going to forget all the time. I'm going to forget. You're going to forget. Even if it's the smallest thing, I need support too, to be reminded of all the beauty that is here, to be reminded of how amazing my being is and how amazing your being is. I can't, as you said, I can't do it alone. So if we continue to have these reminders and opportunities, then that's when I get excited, because I imagine when I am sitting in meditation, if I deeply know that all beings have this ability to end suffering and be all those beautiful qualities they love, they all have this ability. And then if I imagine all beings realizing this, I just sit with, it's like infinitely sit with all beings of the world in their realized state. And it's just such a hopeful or joyful feeling to know that this is possible. This exists for everyone.
Yes. I feel that.
It makes you feel infinite. Like, it's like it's never, there's no borders, there's no boundaries to it when you sit with all beings, and instead of thinking of them as they might be right now, see the potential of that being it's here right now, it's possible. And what does that feel like when you meditate with all these beings sitting with you, and you really truly know their potential and their ability?
Yes. That actually reminds me, there is a grand meditation this Sunday, which I will just look up quickly. Part of it is, I don't know if you follow the HeartMath Institute.
No.
But they are a really amazing organization that does research on the fields that surround our heart. And they do a lot of research on how meditation affects our heart and our brain chemistry and our heart chemistry, and really great organization. But they're joining forces with another organization called MUM, or Moments of Mass Mindfulness. And this Sunday, May 12th at 7 a.m. Pacific time, there will be a mass meditation. So,
oh wow, that's such a beautiful tie-in to what we were just saying.
Yes, I thought of it. I thought I was definitely going to participate. So I hope that anybody listening and can join us. And
so, what do you go to again?
Pardon?
What is the link?
I will send it directly to you. Maybe you can even put a link under the video as well. But it's through HeartMath Institute and MUM, or Moments of Mass Mindfulness. So yeah, a little bit of a link underneath that we can all tap into.
Yeah. I think this whole thing then reminds me back to where we started in terms of the fatigue that I was feeling, that even as I feel fatigue, say now I've showed up, you've reminded me about this concept of being in a place of maybe a little discomfort, maybe a little place that it's not so easy for me to be. And then that reminder and then that discussion that continued started to help me realize again that, oh yeah, I know this teaching of all beings have this ability to end their suffering and remember their light. And then that made me remember that image of everybody sitting with me. And then the amount of energy that comes back into my being just from remembering how incredible everyone is. All of a sudden the fatigue starts to go.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And also I think you did honor it, which I really appreciated. I think it's so important that whatever feelings come through, right, we don't resist them.
Yeah, that's a beautiful, beautiful statement, especially too when you think of pain in the field that we work in, the difference between resisting and fighting and what that brings versus allowing and honoring and supporting that being who's struggling.
Mm.
They're very two different results. The one is like fighting, hating, I don't want to be here, rejecting. And the other one is, okay, you're here, you're allowed. Okay, you're here, I feel you struggling because I've allowed you to be here. I feel the being struggling. Oh, my heart opens for them because I want to support them.
Mm.
So it's such a different response if we, fight it or if we honor or allow it.
Mm. That's so good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Shall we
Maybe
go to another moment on that and reflect on that?
we can, or we can bring that into our last practice where, if we bring in that idea of what does it feel like to honor and allow, and take a moment there versus what does it feel like to fight and reject, so that we have the direct experience of both. So we're not trying to always be allowing and honoring. It's actually, no, I know what allowing and honoring brings, and I clearly know what rejecting and fighting brings. And now I'm going to just make a clear choice of what do I want my moments to be filled with.
Mm.
So that when you're in meditation or you're in this world, we're just moving from insight.
Mm. Yeah, and then that way it changes everything because things don't happen to you, they happen through you, and that's how you can enter that flow.
Mm.
Excuse me. But when things happen to you, that takes the control away from you. But if things happen through you, there's no resistance. It just, this has happened, acknowledgement, honoring it, honoring the feelings that it brings. And then that way it disempowers it and allows you to let it go.
Mm.
And it's so important to just continue to be that, in that state of flexibility, of change. That's what we're about. There is nothing still. We are, change is happening with every moment. And it's just like you said, I think that was beautiful, consciously choosing how to respond in each moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like the through, because it's like there's a choice in there, and it's a transforming choice if we want it. And if we want it to go through us, but say we already know the suffering something brings, we've had the direct experience, right away, when we allow it, we can shift it right away to support and love, rather than participating in the fighting and the rejecting and then having to go through that experience again. So that moving through, it depends on our ability at the time, but where it starts to shift as it comes in is a really neat part in terms of, oh, it's allowed to come through, but I have the ability to transform it.
Yeah. And that actually reminds me of another teaching by Pema. She says that the moment we're resisting, the possibility of getting hooked comes in. She calls it getting hooked, because once we get hooked, unfortunately, it's a cycle. It's a vicious cycle, and we can easily go down that path. But again, I think awareness is key, because the realization of, oh, I'm getting hooked at this moment, something is triggering me, or I'm allowing my fatigue to come over, and maybe that leads me to be in a more negative mood, or something here will trigger me. But again, if you catch it on time, then we can just let go of that resistance and move into the next. And she was saying too, how you could be, a mindfulness practitioner for many, many years, and the opportunities will always come to be triggered or to become hooked. And so it's just a moment by moment, day by day, each time becoming more and more mindfully aware of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely, because yes, presence can create, thoughts and sensations, and they can be beautiful, but there's also the mind stream that is just going to be there. It's not bad or wrong. If it's storytelling, if it's in suffering, it's in all kinds of stuff. The only difference is if we get involved with it
Mm.
always, that would be the difference in terms of, oh, I don't always have to be involved with that mind stream, but if I allow it to be here and it's not necessarily a reflection of me or what's happening, it's just a creative tool. So I can know that the mind stream is here, sensations, all that stuff, but so is presence. It's always here too. And so where am I going to put my attention? And when I start to put it on presence, the silence, the love, the spaciousness, this becomes very bright. The mind stream and the sensations and all the stuff in the physical form are still going. They just become quieter, but they're not wrong or bad when they're very bright. You know, that idea of, oh, I'm thinking and that's a bad thing. No, it's beautiful. It's always going to be here, thinking, thinking, thinking. But where we put our attention is going to change the experience that we have.
Mm-hmm. And you're right. They're definitely tools because they give us guidance, right? Emotions and feelings, and those ones that we might call negative. Those are also there for our benefit. So in that, we do need to acknowledge them and we do need to honor them. And then just become curious or investigate, why are these feelings coming up in me? And are they worth getting hooked into, or can I let them go? That goes back to what we were talking about last time with choice.
Now I even shorten that process even more. That question of why, I think for me, is no longer there. It just becomes, what does this thought or what does this experience bring? And if I go into the felt sense of it and it just brings suffering, then I know, sorry, I'm not going to put my being in a place that only brings suffering. Or how can I be of support and love to this being who is suffering? That's the short, because the why I feel now is, what does it help me to know the why? If in this moment it's just bringing suffering, do I even need to go any further? And we can explore, as you say, we can be curious, and maybe there are moments that might be appropriate to do it. If we want to shorten the practice even more to make it that much quicker and interrupting the old, instead of getting it all sucked in with the story that it's telling, if the thing only brings suffering and you want to rest in peace and love and joy, then your being, if you make that commitment, you make that agreement that I will no longer put my being in a situation that only brings suffering, then right away, we don't have to ask those questions. We can just move ourselves into a new opportunity.
It's the easiest thing to do and the most challenging, right?
It can be challenging, yeah. Definitely. Perfect. So shall we end then with just a few moments of integrating, I think, some of the key concepts of allowing and honoring whatever is here. The healing that can happen with deep listening and being heard and knowing that beings are there to support and love us. Is there any other ones that you want in the meditation?
Yeah, I think you mentioned, and just honoring ourselves, honoring our truth, honoring what's there.
So maybe we'll have a big one on honoring.
That's a good one.
So let's just take a moment to come back to resting together, just letting all that we've heard rest with us. Whether your being is saying it agrees or doesn't agree, it does not matter. Just let yourself rest and breathe with us. And just honor. If your being is agreeing, then honor. If your being is disagreeing with something, just honor that. see what happens, that no matter what we are doing, whether we are agitated or fighting, whether we are joyful or loving, what happens when we start to allow and honor what is here? We embrace it. We welcome it. And it knows that it too is allowed. That we will not hate or reject it. We will not try to stop or push it away. What happens if you imagine just embracing it? Knowing that this is your best at this moment. Just breathe with that for a moment. What happens when you allow your being to be as it is? That it too is deserving of love and support, no matter what it is. As your body begin to relax, as your breath becomes softer, and just maybe some sense of relaxation and your heart opening comes back. Let's take this last moment here to rest in that felt sense of honoring. Let it permeate your entire being. Maybe even extending it to other beings as we honor them just as they are. And just starting to come back to a slightly deeper breath. Beginning to awaken your being with each breath. And then when you feel ready, allowing the eyes to open. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel.
Mm-hmm.
That was beautiful.
You too. Always a pleasure talking with you.
I look forward to our next.
Me too. I'll see you next time.